Well, good morning. I hope you have your coffee or tea or whatever it is, or maybe just a glass of water or whatever, or maybe you're eating your breakfast. This is Jim Sunderwirth, and I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate you watching. And it's kind of exciting to know that God is kind of or is taking us on this little journey that we're on, the journey of faith. We talk about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and how God has used them, even though they weren't perfect. How many realize that God can use imperfect people? Well, He does, because He uses you and me, and none of it. There's no one perfect but Jesus, and we all have our histories and all that, and our stories of our journey of faith. Now Jacob has this journey of faith going, and he now is with Laban, and Laban's caught up with him, and he's going back to his father's land, his land of Israel, and so as he's there, we find that he learns another step of faith when he's talking to Laban, and it's kind of it's a mystery how God can use all this, but God does use it. So Laban is sitting there, and he's come to get his family. He wanted to take them back, but God told him no. So they made up a contract, and this contract said that they're going to put the stones up, and they're going to make a line that Laban's not going to come after him ever again, and Jacob's not going to come back ever again. So they put up some stones. But before they do that, as Jacob is reminding him how much he'd worked for him for all those years, for his wives, 14 years, and all the different things, then Jacob says something that's very, very important, and shows us that Jacob is bending more toward the Lord. His maturity level is growing. And it says this in verse 42, if you're following along in chapter 31. It says, "Unless the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the fear of Isaac, had been with me, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked you last night and told you." That's what he told you, that don't touch Jacob. Right here, he said, I want to glorify God. I want to give glory to God for what He's done in my life. He said He was going to be with me. He said He was going to take care of me, and I recognize the fact, when I've been with you and now I'm at this point, God has done this. God has brought us this far. And so Jacob, and that's when they made the covenant, and they put the rocks up, and they said, I'm not going to come after you, and you're not going to come back to me. And this will be a witness. I'll have these pillars of rock there. And Jacob swore by the fear of the father of Isaac that he would not come back. And then it says another thing. It says in verse 54 of that same chapter that Jacob offered a sacrifice on that mountain. In other words, he began to glorify God, and then he began to worship. Wow, that was a phenomenal thing. Jacob now, before Laban, before his whole family, he said, I'm going to give God the glory because He's been with me this whole time, and He's prospered me. And then he sacrificed, and then he says, not only am I going to give Him the glory, but I'm going to worship Him. Now, when you give your life and your eyes are opened up to the magnitude of the glory of God, the heavens declare His glory, the earth shows His handiwork. See, all of sin had come short of that glory. They started glorifying in everything else but God. They glorified in their strength, they glorified in their ambition, they glorified in their friends, they glorified in their money, they glorified in everything else. They glorified in themselves, as Jacob had done for so long. And this time he says, now I'm going to glory in God because God has done this for me. And so he not only, when you start glorifying God, you begin to worship Him. And he began to bow and worship and sacrifice to the God. And his family began to see this change in Jacob. And it was a wonderful thing. And then the next thing he did in chapter 32, so Jacob went on his way, and the angel of the Lord met him. And Jacob saw, this is God's camp, and he called this place a very, very special place that Jacob ran into the fact that he wanted to send his messengers from that place to Esau now and make amends. Look, when you start glorifying God, and then you start worshiping God and honoring Him with your life and worship Him, then I guarantee you, when you love God with all your heart and love your neighbors yourself, then he began to get right relationship with human beings, with his brothers and with those around him. See, when God changes your life, He changes your heart. And when He changes your heart, then you see people different. That is God's creation, those other people, your brothers and sisters, and all that you had aught against, you want to get reconciled. So there is glorifying God, there's a worship when you change your heart toward God, and there's reconciliation that comes into your life that gives you freedom. Wow, Jacob is teaching us things that we're going through and are on our journey of maturity as we grow in the likeness of God, glorifying, worshiping, and reconciliation with others. That's a great thought. Hey, I went past my time again. Can you believe it? Time goes by so fast. See you tomorrow.